Morning, good afternoon, good evening. I have on this platform described Zimbabwe as a failed state with the misfortune of having corrupt, incompetent, and murderous Zanu PF thugs as the ruling party, and equally corrupt, incompetent, and utterly useless MDC, Triple C opposition leaders. So one of the person who's been following some of those comments fired back and saying, well, we should be our president for now then, if both Zanu PF and MDC Triple C leaders are no good. I think that is a good question. But I've also said on this platform several times that what Zimbabwe needs is to implement democratic reforms necessary to transform the present failed system to a democratic one. We need to implement the democratic reforms which will stop Zanu PF rigging the elections, for one thing. It must be said, and I've said it on this platform as well, that we did have the opportunity to implement those reforms, particularly during the 2008 to 2013 GNU. The primary purpose of the GNU was to implement the democratic reforms. Robert Mugabe bribed Tsvangirai and his MDC friends with the trappings of high office, including the limousines, ministerial limos, very generous salaries and allowances, and for Tsvangirai, the US $24 million mansion. And as we have learned recently, some of the top brass in the MDC leadership were given farms and money for other goodies. So the reforms were forgotten. No meaningful reforms were implemented during the entire 5 years of the GNU. None. What we have got to accept as a nation is that without those reforms, we will never have quality leaders. It's like fishing in a sewage pond. The present political system has poisoned the waters to the point where it has become a sewage pond. To say who is going to lead the nation from the present leadership is like asking whether if you keep fishing in a sewage pond, you'll ever catch quality fish. You'll never catch quality fish. We need to change the system. And I need to emphasize here that the fact that MDC leaders have failed to implement even one token reform even when they had the golden chance to do so, does not mean we do not need the reforms, much less that there's no one else who can implement those reforms. We need those reforms, and there are people who can implement those reforms. What we need is a new government of national unity that will be tasked to implement those reforms. In a GNU, you don't have to worry about who is president. It's academic. A GNU does not need a president. The new GNU will be formed by individuals whom the nation this time will have the confidence of knowing they will implement the democratic reforms the nation needs to move on. That is what the people must understand. I must also emphasize at this point that one of the most disappointing things about Zimbabwe politics is that many Zimbabweans out there fail to understand what the primary purpose of the MDC-CCC leadership opposition party was. Even to this day, they fail to understand that the primary purpose of the 2008 to 2013 GNU was to implement the reforms. And it is for that reason that they've fallen victims of being easily conned into participating in flawed elections only to perpetuate the dictatorship. One of the cases to this nation has been having millions of Zimbabweans who have the vote and yet have no clue what is going on. I think if the ordinary Zimbabweans out there understood their responsibility in a healthy and functioning democracy, Zimbabwe will not be where we are today. So, in other words, the reforms, the cleaning up, has got to start with the electorate themselves. The people themselves have to make a conscientious decision to the realization that the present system has failed, and they have the courage to seek to change it. Because change has got to come from the people. The opposition leaders, much less the Zanu-PF leaders, will never initiate any meaningful democratic change in Zimbabwe. Both parties are content with the status quo. It is the people who have got to force that change, to have the discipline to understand what's going on and the commitment to make sure that they define the change they want and make sure that it is carried out. Think about it. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.